is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Good morning, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to another great episode on The Bridge on US Arab Radio, live streaming on US Arab Radio and on Facebook Live. Today, we are talking about a very important and timely topic, crisis and conflict in two neighboring African countries, Sudan and Ethiopia. What are the regional dynamics and the international implications for these two important and pressing conflicts? And with me this morning discussing this important and timely topic are two distinguished guests with their expertise on Middle East and East Africa affairs. My first guest, Dr. Imad Harb, is the Director of Research and Analysis in the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. He has been writing extensively about Middle East affairs for a long time. And my second guest is Mr. Isma'il Kushkush, who is an independent Sudanese-American journalist who has been commenting on East Africa affairs for a long time and has been the East Africa Bureau Chief for New York Times. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sahar. Good morning.
Thank you so much. So we want to start with you, Imad, talking about the importance of what has been going on now in terms of the conflicts in both Sudan and Ethiopia. There has been international attention, international intervention, especially notably on the part of Western countries, especially the United States. Can you please explain to our listeners and viewers what is the geostrategic importance and significance of these two countries, Sudan and Ethiopia, for Western interests and especially American interests, please?
Well, good morning, Sahar, and good morning to you, Ismail, and to the audience at large. This is a very, very good question, a complicated question, and a very broad question. But we're talking about a very, very strategic region in the world. East Africa, the Horn of Africa, is a very strategic region. We're talking about a place where somewhere between 30 and 40% of oil passes going to Europe and the United States. We're talking about countries that are multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and so when we're talking about these two countries, we are really almost touching on the security of the international system, so to speak. So this is why what happens in Sudan and Ethiopia is extremely important for all international powers and actually all regional powers as well. If we talk internationally, I mean, the United States definitely is very, very interested in what happens there. China, Russia, the UK, France, and the regional governments, all the countries of the Arabian Peninsula, what's going on in Yemen. So we're talking about and obviously west of these two countries in Africa proper, we're talking about many, many different complications as well. So this is why these two countries are very, very important for international security, and that's why international powers are interested in trying to resolve whatever afflicts these two countries.
Yes, thank you so much. And my second question is to you, Ismail. Definitely the military coup which erupted in Sudan on October 25th is a major blow to the democratic transition in this African country. There were so many hopes about the democratic transition in Sudan, and then the military coup happened. Can you please explain to our listeners and viewers what were some of the trigger factors that were behind the eruption of the military coup?
So there are a number of I think, issues to consider when analyzing why Sudan's military took the action it did right now on October 25th. For those who may not have a background of what happened in Sudan in 2019 with the Sudanese revolution, in August of 2019, the military component, which was known as the military council made an agreement with the various Sudanese civilian forces that were under an umbrella coalition known as the Forces for Freedom and Change. They came to an agreement, to a power-sharing agreement that was to last for about 3 years and then transition into a fully civilian government, which was supposed to happen yesterday. The approachment of that period, I think, is one of the reasons why the military took the action, as it was supposed to give up its part of the partnership into a full civilian government. Now, for those who may not follow Sudan closely, I think it's important to also recognize that what we know as the military council in Sudan really is two parts. You have the army, and then you have what is known as the rapid support forces, which is basically a militia that was officialized, made official. The military council is made of two parts, and then you have this partnership with civilian forces. So during this transitional period, other than the transitioning of power to a full civilian force, the other thing is that there was supposed to be a review of the assets of this military council. And as that review, as that investigation was getting deeper and deeper, and the fear that it would lose access to power and to wealth through the companies that the military owned, there are those who think that this also ignited the action by the military to do what it did. There are other factors also. One can also be critical of how the civilian side, or some of the civilian side, its actions, its rhetoric, and how it was dealing during this transitional. I don't think the civilian side is absolutely innocent either. But I think mainly this idea of transitioning power to a full civilian force, I think, is what prompted the military to take action.
Yes, thank you so much for this clarification. Imad, when the American President Joe Biden came to office, he raised the slogan, "America is back." And everyone was expecting some form of, moral authority and leadership for the United States on the international front, especially in terms of upholding issues of freedom and support to democracy, and also to human rights, for sure. We saw different attitudes and positions from the American administration towards human rights issues and abuses. We have seen, for example, discrepancies in terms of using the term coup. So we have seen the US administration quickly describing what happened in Sudan as a coup from day one. But we did not see that, for example, in terms of the military takeover in Egypt in 2013, or the confiscation of powers and consolidation of powers in the hand of the Tunisian president more recently. How can we possibly explain these discrepancies in American foreign policy?
Well, thank you, Sahar. Do you have the whole week? We can discuss it. This is I wrote about that a couple of weeks ago. I called it the chameleon-like American foreign policy. I mean, it changes colors according to how the State Department, the White House, the Department of Defense decide on how to treat issues like this. Tunisia is not a coup yet. Egypt is not a coup yet, but Sudan is. So that definitely sends different messages to the international community. It basically highlights the fact that the United States is actually looking out for its own interest in considering how to deal with a certain case versus another. Also, we shouldn't forget that what's happening in Israel against the Palestinians, what's happening in Israeli apartheid and the occupation regime in the West Bank. This does not elicit any comments from the United States regarding democracy or human rights. So we're definitely talking about political interests here. We're not talking about principles. The issue of Sudan, the American administration, the previous administration, the Trump administration, was very interested in Sudan as becoming another normalizer with the state of Israel, and it helped the country economically. It lifted it lifted it from the countries sponsoring terrorism list. There is an interest in Washington in bringing Sudan into the fold. So when the coup happened, this made things a little difficult for the United States on how to sell Sudan as a democratic country. The United States wanted Sudan to be a civilian democratic country, but at the same time, it wanted it to keep its normalization agreement with Israel. But also, the United States was also instrumental in the Juba peace agreement, and all these things made the United States look like a fool. After all, Jeffrey Feltman was there just the night before Burhan declared his coup. And they were actually surprised that the Sudanese would go this way. This is something that the United States will have to work on for a long, long time. Unfortunately, we also have to say that there has been many other occasions, like the Egyptian one in 2013, that the United States dithered about. Do we call it or don't we call it a coup? And even Barack Obama didn't know how to really handle the Egyptian case. So, which means that the United States is really speaking on both sides of its mouth and being contradicted in its foreign policy.
Yes, and definitely that somehow shakes, of course, the image and the credibility of the United States as the chief diplomat.
Exactly. President Biden, talks to President Xi in China, from China, and he talks about human rights and respect for human rights. He excoriates Russia for its human rights record, and yet, in the Middle East, somehow human rights are not so prominent in American foreign policy, and that definitely negatively impacts American foreign policy in the region.
Absolutely, so much so that some critics actually said, "Are we witnessing a new era under President Biden, or is it pretty much more of the same of what we have been witnessing under former President Donald Trump?" Some of the critics definitely raised this point as well. Isma'il, can we count on Sudanese grassroots activism and resistance from civilians? The Sudanese people are known for having political awareness and strong political will. We have seen the resistance. We have seen how they toppled the regime of al-Bashir. You talked about the 2019, of course, uprising. Can we count on the resistance and grassroots activism of the Sudanese people who are brave and going out to the streets and protesting and demonstrating, even in the face of police bullets and violence? Can this be the tipping point? Or can we have other tipping factors that can return Sudan to the course of democratic transition?
I think the reaction from the Sudanese street definitely will be a factor in how events eventually unfold. The military itself cannot discount the reaction from the street. You have to keep in mind that for 30 years, under the authoritarian rule of Omar al-Bashir, for the Sudanese to have the revolution that they had in 2019, which was quite spectacular, quite frankly, for those of us even who had covered protests and uprisings in Sudan before. I mean, for many of us, we thought that this was not, when the protests started in 2018, we thought this was just going to be another round of protests. The type of organizing that happened in Sudan between December 2018 and April 2019, I think was quite extraordinary, despite the restrictions, despite the violence that came from the state. So that network that already exists is what is operating right now in Sudan. A phrase that you see right now among Sudanese activists and within Sudanese communities, that this generation is not like any generation before. Dajil Rakib Rasul. This means that they will not accept any type of return to a type of authoritarian rule. We're already seeing protests. I mean, what is quite even extraordinary is that the protests started before October 25th, before the actual coup. On the 21st of October, there were huge protests on the anniversary of Sudan's October Revolution of 1964, the very first popular uprising in the region to dislodge a military government in the region. I think the military was quite aware that any holding of power, any coup would be met by large protests, by a large reaction. We're seeing that already. And again, the networks, the plan of action, so to speak, is already playing out on Sudanese streets within the Sudanese diaspora. How that unfolds, I think, is yet to be seen. I think there's much yet to come. The very fact that the military is using a particular narrative, quote unquote, correcting the path of the revolution, means that it cannot discount what happened in 2018, 2019, actually as a revolution. That it is only trying to correct what it believes were mistakes in this transitional period. So I think we're going to see a great degree of resistance to what is happening right now. How that unfolds is yet to be seen.
Absolutely. There are
Sahar, may I just comment a little bit here? Yes, the Sudanese issue is a Sudanese issue, and as far as I'm concerned, only the Sudanese people will change their political system. Only them are going to be the ones opposing this coup. But also, the regional aspect of it is quite clear. What Isma'il said about correcting the revolution, so to speak. That's exactly what happened in 2013. I mean, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, that's exactly what he said. He's correcting the revolution of January 25, 2011. So it's the same thing. Egyptian intelligence officers were in Sudan before that. They're now involved in how al-Bashir and his people really organized the post-coup era. So the regional aspect cannot be forgotten. Neither can the part from the Saudi Emirati interference also in that process is also very, very important to look at.
Right, and the comparison with the Egyptian context is going to be one of the points we're going to discuss today. So we're going to come back to this very interesting and important discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, and seafood dinners. Plus, they offer big trays of your favorite food and so much more. Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab is located at 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills and is open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So stop in or call Kashat's today at 248-538-9552. That number again, 248-538-9552. Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied.
While we've been staying safe at home, scientists have been on a journey. The destination, a COVID-19 vaccine. This journey began decades ago with research into other coronaviruses. Scientists built from there with months of research and development, cooperation with other experts worldwide, and clinical trials on tens of thousands of volunteers of diverse race, age, and health status. They arrived at a safe, effective vaccine, and hundreds of thousands in Michigan have already been vaccinated. But the next step is ours. We need to get the vaccine when we can. Keep wearing masks correctly and taking precautions until we reach our destination, freedom from COVID-19 and getting back to the lives we love. Discover the facts for yourself at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights. When it comes to reproductive medicine, IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 5 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. As a founding member of IVF Michigan Fertility Centers, Dr. Nicholas Shama is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. Dr. Shama has performed over 10,000 IVF cases and has helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. American board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, Dr. Nicholas Shama is a very caring, compassionate, expert physician that understands not only the medical but also the emotional toil of infertility on his patients. When it's time, get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio. Call toll-free 855-952-9600, 855-952-9600.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we are talking today about a very important and timely topic: crisis and conflict in 2 neighboring African countries, Sudan and Ethiopia. What are the regional dynamics and international implications? And with me this morning discussing this important and timely topic are 2 distinguished guests: Dr. Imad Harb, Director of Research and Analysis in the Arab Center, Washington, D.C., and Mr. Isma'il Kushkush, independent Sudanese American journalist. Right before the commercial break, Imad brought an important point, which is some of the similarities between the scenarios that are playing out in Sudan and what happened, previously in Egypt. So, Ismail, I want to ask you this question. Some people say that basically what is happening in Sudan right now is, so to speak, a chapter from the Egyptian playbook, right? Basically, this is what we have seen before happen in the Egyptian case. They give, for example, some examples of similarities or parallels, such as the internet shutdowns, the control over social media websites, sabotaging the activism at the grassroots level, use of violence or repression from the regime, and of course, the creation of some form of civilian/military council to try to legitimize the military takeover. How do you see these parallels? Do you see some similarities and differences in both the Egyptian and the Sudanese cases in that regard?
I mean, there are similarities and, of course, there are differences. I think it's important to look at each case, of course, on its own, but also to recognize some of these parallels that exist. The role of the military and intelligence in Sudanese politics has been significant since independence. Sudan has been in this vicious cycle of civilian government, military coup since its independence since 1956, with 3 or 4 now military coups taking over. The military is not only it has its own political economy, so to speak, that it controls companies that are a source of profit and of power and its authority within Sudanese politics. Giving up on that, I think, is where you might see similarities with Egypt in post-Egyptian revolution of 2011. Prior to this military coup, we saw a dire economic situation, which was also, I think, very similar to what was happening in Egypt. Some speculate that this was, quote unquote, manufactured. by remnants of the old government and their access to economic sectors. Of course, in the case of Sudan, with this current coup, it was made worse by the pandemic. So with the economic side of things, discontent with the performance of the transitional government, which again, I think there's some legitimate criticism to be made against the performance of the transitional government. However, I think for most Sudanese, this idea of transitioning into a full civilian government was the main prize. The historical relations between the Sudanese military and the Egyptian military, as far as training providing, etc., I think is those connections is what many has made many people suspicious of the role of Egyptian military in events in Sudan. A Wall Street Journal article last week, I think, indicated that Egyptian authorities were aware of the coming coup by Burhan. So that involvement, those historical ties, those parallels do exist. Of course, there are specific Sudanese issues specific to the Sudanese situation. Given the complexity of the political structure in Sudan, the agreement between civilian forces and the military, but also the size of Sudan and the various conflicts. I mean, a part of the transitioning into the civilian rule was to make peace with various rebel groups. So there are specifics to Sudan, but there are also parallels, I think, between what happened in Egypt as far as how the state is responding to the pro-democracy movement.
We certainly hope that Sudan is going to have a different outcome, though, in terms of its journey to democratic transition, that's for sure. Imad, we can really describe the American policy towards what's happening in the region, and especially the conflicts in Sudan and Ethiopia, as using what can be described as the stick and carrot type of policy in terms of trying to use a combination or a mixture of incentives and disincentives. In other words, talking about humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance, even giving a lot of COVID-19 vaccines to Ethiopia, and at the same time talking about economic sanctions, and in the case of Sudan, freezing $700 million in economic assistance to the government. How effective are these types of policies, in your opinion, in terms of tackling these crises? And if they're not that effective, what could be some alternative scenarios? Can we talk, for example, about the possible deployment of U.S. troops under the umbrella of UN peacekeeping or other scenarios?
I'll answer the very last portion of the question first. No, the United States is not in the mood to send any troops overseas anymore. It will not commit any forces there unless if there is a direct attack on the United States, then maybe the United States will consider that. I think the United States will continue to depend on the African Union for peacekeeping troops, and it is politically speaking today. The Biden administration is under a lot of constraints to be able to deploy any troops overseas. On the other hand, the United States can always use the economic sanctions route. Yes, it has used it in Sudan. I mean, the United States stopped $700 million of going to Sudan. It also probably had a very, very good vote in the World Bank to halt $2 billion of economic assistance to Sudan. The same thing in Ethiopia, except for humanitarian assistance. That's all the United States can do as far as assistance is concerned. I think the pressure here is on some Sudanese parties themselves and some of their regional extensions. In the Sudanese case, obviously, the United States is interested in talking to Egypt, interested in talking to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, to try to see if the situation in Sudan can be ameliorated one way or the other. But it looks like the United States is still is still interested in the civilians taking over government in Khartoum. In the Ethiopian case, it's much more complicated. I think the United States had bet on Abiy Ahmed to be really a good leader. Apparently, over 3 years since his election, he has really created a lot of animosity in the country, animosity towards him, as a matter of fact. And the United States has always had, it had great relations with Ethiopia. Meles Zenawi was a very, very good friend of the United States, and the United States was quite open on Ethiopia and helped it in a lot of things. So apparently, Abiy Ahmed is doing things that are not conducive to social peace, to the social peace within Ethiopia. This issue of the militias basically aligning against him is very, very dangerous for Ethiopia. Also, we also have to remember that that little elephant in the room, the question of Ethiopian relations with Sudan and with Egypt. This is a very, very important issue for the United States, and the United States is rather quite worried about what happens with the dam issue. We also have to remember that the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front was actually the one that ruled Ethiopia for a long time, since 1990, and now all the leaders are in the mountains or fighting to take over Addis Ababa. So this is why, I mean, the United States has a lot of cards, but yet it depends on local actors and some regional actors over which it has no total control. So this is an ongoing process. Jeffrey Feltman, I think, flew into Ethiopia yesterday, and he's definitely going to try to get these people to talk to each other a little bit. I really wonder how much goodwill Abiy Ahmed has left with the Tigrayan Liberation Front to be able to really talk to them. He has created a lot of enemies. His use of the Amhara militias, his call on Eritrea to help him against them. All this stuff is really very, very bad for him. So I hope that things really shape up, that the United States or Jeffrey Feltman succeeds in finding a way of all of them cooperating on social peace in Ethiopia. But this is still to be seen.
Right, and I think there are so many question marks also about the effectiveness of all of these policies and tactics and strategies on the part of the United States. Even Jeffrey Feltman's efforts, Antony Blinken's visit, he's talking to the Kenyans about being brokers in this the conflict going on in Ethiopia and all of that stuff. Many question marks, exclamation marks about the effectiveness of all of these.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, Ethiopia is not a tiny country. I mean, we're talking about 70-80 million people here, and with multiple ethnicities, multiple economic relations and economic interests, so who can interfere in a country like this? And they can be friends with everybody. So it's a very, very tough nut to crack.
Absolutely. So Isma'il, talking about the effectiveness of all of these policies, what kind of strategies or tactics can really be effective, in your opinion, to resolve the crisis in Sudan? Could economic sanctions, for example, be a key decisive factor in terms of trying to change things around? And if not, what could possibly be the tipping factor or the effective strategy to be used here?
Frankly, I think the worst is yet to come in Sudan. The economic sanctions, I think, will eventually be applied, probably targeted sanctions. I think total sanctions have proven to be somewhat of a failure in the past. During the 30 years of Bashir's rule, sanctions really did not dislodge the government. It had some effect, but it was really mostly felt by the average Sudanese. Governments find a way to get around sanctions and survive. And I think any type of full sanctions on the military council of Burhan, I think, will probably do the same. There might be some targeted sanctions, but I think at the end of the day, when you calculate how the military in its various components, the army and the rapid support forces, and I keep on bringing in the rapid support forces because I think this is an element that maybe some of your listeners is not familiar with. This is a tribal militia that has no escape from anything but to remain in power. The elephant in the room in Sudanese politics is the question of justice and accountability for those who were responsible for crimes during various conflicts in Sudan, in Darfur, and most notably the June 3rd massacre of 2019, which is the massacre of Sudanese protesters at the sit-in in front of the army headquarters during the Sudanese revolution, where 120 Sudanese young protesters were killed. It is alleged that those belonging to the rapid support forces were involved in that. So the question of justice, the question of accountability is what looms in the heads and minds of the military, particularly the RSF. So will any form of diplomatic or economic tools dislodge the thinking of the military? That I think remains to be seen, but it's hard to think that it will, unless within these institutions themselves, within the army, maybe at lower ranks, there might be an opposition to the higher ranks, to Burhan. Within the rapid support forces, there might be a discontent with Hamati, even though that I think is a much more difficult scenario given the very tribal nature of the RSF, where most belong to the very same tribe. They see it as a collective. So this very complex situation that we find Sudan in, I think is there are many factors. I mean, it's the army, it's the RSF, and then the regional interest of regional players, whether those very close to the military council, whether it be the military in Egypt, whether it be the governments in Abu Dhabi and Riyadh, those, and then remnants of the old government. I mean, what's interesting is to see that those who came in support of the military's action were remnants of Bashir's government, claiming, again, using that phrase, quote unquote, correcting the path of the revolution. This, I think, makes for a very difficult and complex situation. It's very hard, I mean, at least for me, to see Sudan moving forward unless there are difficult and even bloody actions and confrontations, whether internally within all of these institutions or between the various different institutions, be it the army, the RSF, the civilian forces, and the average Sudanese, the Sudanese street.
Let's hope and pray for a better future for Sudan and its people moving forward. We'll come back to this very important discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. Enjoy the first Syrian-style cuisine in Michigan. At Damas Cuisine and Catering, you'll find a wide selection of Syrian foods and sweets in our menu, like frikeh, poisi, grape leaves with steak, mashawi platter, hot mahashi, char-grilled kebab, shawarma, and much more. Get super fast delivery from Damas Cuisine and Catering right to your door. Order online at damascuisine.com/menu and track your order live. Damas Cuisine and Catering, 28841 Orchard Lake Road in Farmington Hills. Call 248-987-4985.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we're talking today about a very important and timely topic: conflicts and crisis in 2 neighboring African countries, Ethiopia and Sudan. What are the regional dynamics and the international implications? And with me this morning discussing this important topic are 2 distinguished guests. Dr. Imad Harb is the Director of Research and Analysis in the Arab Center, Washington, D.C., and Mr. Isma'il Kushkush is an independent journalist, a Sudanese American independent journalist. So before going to the commercial break, Isma'il, you were talking about the different, scenarios that can possibly play out or happen in the case of Sudan. Which of these different scenarios do you think is most likely to take place and why?
At the moment, what we see is that the military council is solidifying itself in the government. One of the first actions, of course, was to arrest a number of the civilian ministers, and then also to replace some of the personnel in some of the government institutions with new personnel, many who are actually from the old government of Bashir, whether it be in the media, whether it be in some of the major ministries. So I think what the military right now is trying to do is establish a matter of fact, a reality, that whatever negotiations, if negotiations continue, that it is already entrenched and created a new reality. We know that the United Nations, that the United States, some of the regional actors like the government of South Sudan have been acting as intermediaries between the civilian forces and the military. Meetings with the Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, what we see is that the military is trying to have a new prime minister, suggesting new prime ministers to give itself some legitimacy, to have this new quote unquote civilian face. That is what it is trying to do. I think the reaction on the Sudanese street with the protest, extensive protest, is only going to increase. It does seem that there is a measured and calculated response to that. The big protest on the 21st of October, and then on the 30th of October, and on the 13th of November, and then yesterday on the 17th of November, I think it seems that the military has been trying to minimize casualties, but that slowly is changing. Yesterday, there were at least 15 people killed in Greater Khartoum, let alone other cities that we don't know of because of the disruption of the internet and telecommunications. There might be larger numbers, but I think gradually we'll see larger protests, a larger reaction, which will possibly larger casualties. The fear I think that many have is that while these protests, as in the protests of 2018, 2019, were largely nonviolent and were peaceful, that there might be calls within these circles for a armed reaction, as we'd seen in Libya and we've seen in Syria and in other places, so that nonviolent face of discontent, of protests might take a different avenue, and accordingly the military will respond. All scenarios are open right now in Sudan. It's hard to tell where this is going. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I fear that the worst is still to come.
Let's hope and pray for the best. Sudan is an important country, and definitely we hope for the best. Imad, before going to commercial break, you mentioned the dam, the Ethiopian dam. And definitely that's a very important point here when we talk about the ongoing conflicts and crisis in Sudan and Ethiopia. The Ethiopian dam is a very important issue. And of course, it has effects on other countries, especially Egypt in this case. How do you perceive the possibly progress or lack thereof of the negotiations and talks around the Ethiopian dam in the midst of these ongoing conflicts and crises?
Well, this is a very complicated issue, obviously. For one thing, let's put things in their proper perspective. Ethiopia does need more hydroelectric power. The problem is, what kind of agreement can Ethiopia reach with Sudan and with downstream countries, Sudan and Egypt, to satisfy its need for hydroelectric power while not parching the two countries. I'm sorry. So the agreements so far have not really produced what Sudan and Egypt need. Ethiopia has even begun its the third filling, the third phase of the filling of the dam. Which is still not good news. The issue is, first of all, it's a security. It's an issue of food security, water security for these two countries. But yet, at the same time, it's also an issue for international security. I mean, if Egypt were to really try to defend its national interest in its water, then there will be, militarily speaking, then we're talking about a very, very dangerous escalation. At the same time, Sudan is going through its own economic and political problems also, and so is Ethiopia. This is why it may not be only up to the three countries to try to resolve this issue. It may definitely require very strong intervention from the United Nations, the African Union, and the United States to try to find some sort of a formula to do this. But also we have to also have keep in mind that when we're talking about the dam, we also have to remember that the Ethiopians themselves, even the Tigrayan front, the people who are fighting Abiy Ahmed, these people are also cognizant of Ethiopia's need for hydroelectric power. So I don't think that even the rebels who are fighting the central government in Addis Ababa really are very much in the mood for compromising on Ethiopia's Ethiopia's right to its water. This is why there has to be some sort of compromises on everybody's mind. But yet, at the same time, it is now it's tell you the honest truth. I mean, it's a wait and see attitude. The Egyptians are not going to be doing anything, waiting to see what happens with Abiy Ahmed and the rebels. The Sudanese are not going to do anything because they really don't have much power to influence anything, simply because they have their own political. So now it's probably time for everybody to rethink the agreements that were reached. Ethiopia has basically escaped, has gotten its second filling. It was done. Egypt convinced itself that okay, this is acceptable so far, but any more taken away, any more diversion of the Nile water from Egypt and Sudan is definitely going to be very, very dangerous for regional security.
Absolutely. And Imad, you mentioned also, yes, please.
I would comment on that. I think what was supposed to be a legal and environmental discussion, the issue of water rights between countries, between the efficacy of dams today, considering climate change and et cetera, I think turned into a political discussion rather than a legal or an environmental or development issue. I was in Khartoum in 2011, 2010 with the beginning of the discussions on the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia and what kind of impact it would have on Sudan or on Egypt. Now, in Sudan, given the changes that have happened in Sudan, I think what you will see that the rise of the military to power, I think, favors Egyptian foreign policy, given the division within Sudan on the impact of the dam. The military, again, as I had mentioned earlier, with its closer ties to the military in Egypt, will likely take a position that sides with the Egyptian military's position on this. On Sudan, there have been different views on the impact of the dam. Some see it as favoring development in Sudan, the impact that the dam might have, particularly if you consider that someone like Abdullah Hamdok was actually working in Addis Ababa with the United Nations African Economic Commission. But again, the idea that what was supposed to be a legal discussion turned into a political discussion with perceptions of grand strategies and identity issues. So in Egypt, you hear the rhetoric of how the dam affects not only Egypt, but quote unquote Arab security. In Ethiopia, what you're hearing that how it affects African, and these I think are all just rhetoric for local political consumption. The dam has become a national issue in Ethiopia. I think that does not get recognized, and that Ethiopia indeed does have its own development needs, etc. But given the fact that we're not talking about water law or the impact on the environment, and it becomes a game of chess right now. But I think with the rise of the military, with the military coup in Sudan, you're going to see at least the military component within Sudan siding with the Egyptian side. That does not necessarily reflect how all Sudanese see the impact of the dam. But I think this becomes a part of the discussion.
Definitely, and it adds to the complexity of all of these ongoing regional tensions and conflicts for sure. Imad, you mentioned the African Union more than once, and I want to really focus on the possibility or the effectiveness of certain regional bodies such as the African Union, as well as international bodies such as the UN or European Union. Could they possibly play any role in terms of tackling and resolving these ongoing conflicts and tensions in Sudan and in Ethiopia?
Well, the African Union is involved in Ethiopia. Well, actually, it's involved in Somalia more than Ethiopia, and But the African Union does have a role to play, definitely. It also has a role to play in the dam issue. 9 or 10 African countries sit on different parts of the Nile Valley, so they do have something to say. But the African Union so far, unfortunately, has been driven by its own different conflicts or disputes. So each country looks at certain things a different way. They agree on general ideas, that Sudan, for instance, Somalia has to achieve its social peace. But yet, at the same time, some countries that are contributing forces to the African Union forces in Sudan have different interpretations of whom they want to support in Somalia. Kenya supports somebody, Ethiopia supports somebody else, and that is influencing the federal structure of Sudan, and it's actually endangering the unity of the country. So, the African Union does have a role to play. But yet, the African Union is also made up of states with different interests. The European Union definitely has an interest. Obviously, it has an interest in East Africa. The United States has an interest in East Africa. But the idea is that East African countries are in need of technological help, economic help, social assistance, things of that nature. So sometimes they fall victim to who is helping us more. Ethiopia at one point and Eritrea struck a deal for which actually, Abiy Ahmed got himself a Nobel Prize with the assistance of the United Arab Emirates. So, we're talking about a region that is also penetrated, so to speak, by other regions, by other powers. So the issue, as far as I'm concerned, is for African countries within the African Union to decide that what is ours, we should work on our own problems. So, the others are only tributaries. They only help us in certain something. And the African Union should for itself speak for itself and do what is right for African countries.
Absolutely. We'll come back to this discussion right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Are your hands feeling numb? Do you feel pain opening up a jar, turning a key? Are you noticing that your elbow and your shoulder are becoming stiff? Or were you recently injured in your arm? Hello, I'm Dr. Al-Majid Katranji, and at the Katranji Hand Center, which just recently opened down the street from the Somerset Mall, we can provide you with the latest in hand, wrist, elbow, and shoulder care. Visit us at www.katranjihandcenter.com to learn the latest techniques that we have to offer you, and I look forward to taking care of you.
Visit us in Troy at 1565 West Big Beaver Road, Building F, or call Katranji Hand Center for an appointment at 248-869-4263. That's 248-869-4263.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
Life is a nonprofit charity that's provided humanitarian aid and development to people and communities for over 25 years, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Please help improve these efforts. Make your tax-deductible donation to Life now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493.
is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to my program, The Bridge, a monthly show bridging different cultures, communities, and faith traditions. Watch The Bridge on America's Voice of the Arabs Network on all social media platforms. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. And we're discussing today a very important topic, of course, the conflicts in Sudan and Ethiopia. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Good times always fly quickly. So I will have to thank my guests, Dr. Imad Harb and Mr. Isma'il Kushkush, and thank all our listeners and viewers everywhere. And we'll definitely try to finish this important discussion and conversation in another episode. Thank you all so much. Stay well and goodbye.